So, just for the recording, my name is Emily Wildhopper. I'm interviewing Karen Williams here at the Midwest Genealogy Center in Independence, Missouri. This is part of the Midwest Genealogy Center's Inglewood Theater Community Archiving Project. And today's date is August 9th, 2025. So, Karen, let's start at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Denver.
Okay.
In 1954, but don't tell anybody.
And did you grow up there, or what brought you to this part?
No, my dad was a doctor, and he was doing his residency in Denver, and I was born there. And then he was from Kansas City, so when he finished his residency there, they came back to Kansas City. He set up practice here.
Okay, so how old were you when you moved back?
I was, I think, just a little over a year old, so I don't remember Denver. You know, I have to claim it, but, you know, I'm a Kansas City girl. I grew up here.
So have you lived here the rest of your life?
My whole life.
Okay.
Mostly in the Raytown area was where I grew up. And we lived just not far from Swope Park. And then we moved into the heart of Raytown when I was in my teens. So I've always been able to claim being a Kansas City girl. I like it. I'm proud of it.
As you should be, as you should be. Can you, what was your childhood like? Tell me a little bit about growing up.
My family, we had 7 kids. I was number 2. So I helped raise all the little ones. And my mom was luckily a stay-home mom, so she kept us at home. And most of my childhood, I was a bookworm. I was an A student. I loved school. I was the strange one in the family. Nobody else liked school. But I loved school. I read constantly. That was my thing, was reading. I never went anywhere without a book. And I was an outdoor girl. And music. Music was my big thing. I always wanted to learn music. My dad, being a physician, he was all about the academics, so I had to keep Dad happy. And he said, no music lessons because I want you to concentrate on your schoolwork. So I was doing well in school. My mom finally talked him into going and getting us some music instruments. And he said, well, I'll provide the instruments, but they can learn on their own. So we got a piano and some books. And we just picked up the books and learned on our own how to play. And then I wanted an acoustic guitar. So for Christmas one year, it was an acoustic guitar they bought at Western Auto. On their Christmas shelf, they had Western Auto had an acoustic guitar. Wasn't the best, but I learned. It was good.
What kind of music did you like to play?
The first song I ever learned to play all the way through, believe it or not, I was probably 12, was House of the Rising Sun. Because I could do the chords.
What a great start. I
knew those chords. And whatever because we had a book, you know, and it was one of the songs in the book. So whatever songs I knew from the book, I would play. And that was a big song on the radio at the time. So, but I learned, I was big on Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond taught me how to play, because I would listen to his music all the time, and I would pick out the chords on the record as as it was going. I was able to figure out what song. So that's, he taught me how to play. And, eventually I got to where I was asked to play with some of the things at school. I went to O'Hara High School, which is no longer. But they asked me to play, it's a Catholic school. And so I got to play some of the mass things. They had they called them folk masses. So I was part of that, and was able to start doing some, performing type things. And I loved it. I loved doing it. So I've been a music person my whole life. But I always used to tell everybody I love every kind of music except heavy metal and country. I hated country music growing up. Then I married into it and had no choice.
That's very interesting. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Did your dad come around on the music?
A little bit, a little bit. I kept my grades up. He was happy that my grades were good. And he said, as long as you're doing that, he was happy that it wasn't sports. Because with sports, you know, the mom's got to go to the practices and the games and all that. Music, nah, the kids do it on their own. So, and plus, since we weren't taking lessons, there were no recitals to have to go to. So, you know, it wasn't bothering my mom at all, and so he was okay with it. You know, he would rather I just study, but that was okay. I did all right.
How did you first meet Tuffy, your husband?
Well, I was going to UMKC. I started there on a music scholarship, and so freshman year, I was in the choir. That was one of their requirements, was just the general choir. And he was in it too. And one day I was just coming in for class, and in the choir room, they had some side rooms that had pianos in it for kids to go and practice and do sessions. And I heard this piano coming out of one of the rooms that was just incredible. And so I just peeked in, and it was Tuffy sitting there playing. And I just said hello, and he asked me if I was in the choir, and I said yeah. So we visited just a little bit, and then we had to go to class. And then, you know, for several classes, you know, for a while, maybe a month or so, I'd see him in class and wave, you know. But that piano that he was playing, I couldn't forget it. He was incredible on the piano. And then all of a sudden he quit coming to class. And I lost track of him. He went by Carlton. His name, he was named after his dad, and he went by Carlton. So I used to ask everybody, you know, what happened to Carlton? And nobody knew. Nobody knew. And so I just lost track of him. And then I quit music because I saw so many kids there that, I mean, they knew so much more than me. I was self-taught. And so then I thought, well, what else can I do? And luckily I was in a physics class with some of the pharmacy students. And they said, go to pharmacy school. So I checked it out, and it looked interesting, and I got accepted, and I went that route instead.
Okay. What drew you to pharmacy school instead?
Well, my dad being a doctor, my mom was a nurse, my sister was in nursing school, my older sister, and so medicine was in the family. My grandfather, on my mom's side, was a pharmacist in a little town up in Iowa. And so I just thought, I didn't want to be a doctor because I wanted to have a family at some point. I wanted to be a normal person. You know, doctors don't have lives to themselves. My dad was an obstetrician, and he really wanted one of his kids to take over his practice at some point. But I remember hearing that phone ring in the middle of the night, you know, rain or snow, whatever, and Dad having to get up 3 in the morning and go deliver a baby, and I thought, that's not for me. And then nurses work too hard. You know, they do. I just thought, I don't know if I can do all that. And so I thought, pharmacy, I can count pills. So that's what I did. I chose that, and it was a wise choice. A wise choice.
It's worked out well for you.
Oh, very well, very well. I've been fortunate to have good jobs all along. So, and I have always been needed. that's the beauty of pharmacy, is pharmacists are always in short supply. So it's nice to be needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Carlton,
Uh-huh.
was he in your year? Was he also a freshman at the time?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And so you lost touch with him at that point.
Right, right.
Had you all talked about, did you tell him you played the piano? Did you all?
Oh, yeah, but I didn't play anywhere near like him. He was gifted, you know, he was. No, I totally lost track of him. And, yeah, but I always kind of wondered what happened, you know. And
Can I ask, did you like him at the time?
I did, but I did like him, but I was engaged to somebody else. So, yeah. But no, he...
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, he was very attractive. I mean, he was a big fella, 6'4". The guy I was engaged to was about 5'6", you know, about that much shorter than me. And
What was the first fella's name?
his name was Tim.
Tim. How
Tim.
did you meet Tim?
Well, I met him in high school. We knew each other in high school. And, you know, we had dated for a long time. And, you know, we had made a bet because I was just starting college. And he said, I bet by the first week is out, you will be asked out by somebody. I said, no, that won't be, because I'm yours. So, of course, I met Carlton, and first thing he did, he said, what are you doing tonight? And
So he was interested right away.
yeah, oh yeah, he was interested all the time in anybody. But so I lost that bet. I had to be honest, I lost that bet. But that engagement didn't last too long. I realized that, because the first thing Tim told me when I got into pharmacy school was, he said, well, you can go and get your pharmacy license, but no wife of mine's ever going to be working. I thought, if he's already like that, you know, we're already disagreeing on such a big thing, then that's not going to work. So that didn't last very long. Then I got engaged to somebody else. And I was engaged when I ran across Tuffy again.
Okay. So you were engaged to Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Carlton asked you out.
Right.
And you had to turn him down.
Yeah, I had to turn him down.
Because you were engaged.
Right.
And then things ended with Tim. And then there was...
And yeah, then I met a guy named Don.
Don.
And, you know, we dated for quite a while, and we were engaged. And
Did you meet him at UMKC?
Yeah. He was a biology student there. And, you know, in pharmacy, and we shared labs and stuff, so that's how we got to know each other. But all the time, I was still wondering whatever happened to Carlton, because he impressed me with his piano. And I would ask around, because I still took music classes at the conservatory. With UMKC, one of the beauties is they have all the different schools, and if you're a student, you can take classes in the different schools. So I still would take classes in at the conservatory. I was in one group called the Swinging Choraliers, and we did Broadway stuff. I was always big on Broadway musicals, and, you know, I just loved doing that. And anyway, I always would ask people at the conservatory what happened to Carlton, and nobody'd ever even heard of him, you know. So, but all this time, I would hear and see all over town the Tuffy Williams Band was playing here or playing here. You know, I'd drive by a restaurant and they'd have a sign out, Tuffy Williams playing here or performing. And, you know, it was bars and stuff that I didn't go to. But, you know, I remembered, and I'd hear the name on the radio, and the Tuffy Williams Band will be performing here. I had no idea that was Carlton.
Didn't know it was the same person.
I did not know. And then one time, Don, it was Valentine's Day, and he was taking me out to dinner. And the place that we went to dinner was had a bar in the front, a piano bar. And Tuffy Williams was playing at the piano bar. So we walked in, and I immediately recognized him, you know, because he was playing. And he recognized me. He remembered me because he finished his song, and we were there waiting for our table, and he came over, and he was so bold because Don was right there. And he said, "Karen, I forgot your last name. I've been wondering about you. What's your last?" And so I told him my last name, and he said, I want to talk to you. I want to get together with you. What's your phone number?" And Don was standing right there. And I said, "Well, this is my fiance, you know," and I introduced myself, or introduced him. And so Tuffy said, "Well, we'll get together. We'll get together." And he went back to playing, and we went out, went and finished our meal. The next day, he called me. I didn't give him my phone number, but he went home and he remembered my dad was a doctor. And when I told him my name, you know, my maiden name was Sheehan, which is, you know, not ordinary. So he was able to find Dr. Sheehan and found our phone number, and he called my mom. And my mom answered, and she gave him my phone number, and he found me. And that was the end of that engagement.
Really? That
Yeah.
fast?
Oh, that pretty fast, yeah, yeah.
What stood out to you about Tuffy?
He was so vibrant. He had that charisma, you know. He just was so always bubbly, you know. He just had a great personality. He did. He was friends with everybody. People just totally loved him, you know. And the fact that he loved me was, you know, just, it had to be, just had to be. He was great. My mom, my family wasn't very happy about it because at the time I met Tuffy, again, he was just coming out of a divorce himself. And they were all Catholic. And of course, you know, Catholics don't recognize divorce. And
Sorry, Tuffy's family?
no,
Or your family?
my family, they're strict Catholics. And Tuffy was a fundamental Pentecostal holy roller, you know.
Very different.
Very different, very different. And they didn't like the fact that I was with a divorced man that was not a Catholic. And so my family kind of, especially right after we got married, they kind of shoved us out, you know. So it kind of alienated me from my family a lot. But Tuffy's family took me in like I was part of the family. His mom was amazing. I loved her. You know, she was my mom. She was great.
What was her name?
Her name was Irene. Yeah, I just called her Mom. And she was instrumental at the Opry when we had the Opry. She was there every day. She worked for us. She took care of the books. I mean, she cooked for the concession stand area. She did everything. She loved doing it. She was there for Tuffy. So.
Okay. So we're talking about Irene and you and Tuffy getting together.
Right.
What do you, so where are we? Are you still in school at this point, or where
No,
are we in the timeline?
I had graduated. I was out of school. I was working at Research Hospital.
Okay.
And
As a pharmacist?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. And my sister was getting married. And the family fought through the whole wedding, trying to get everything done. It was a disaster. And so Tuffy, as soon as her wedding was over, Tuffy said, you know, well, let's get married. Let's get married. I said, no wedding. I'm not doing that. So, I mean, he asked me on Monday, Saturday, we got married. We just went and to our pastor. I had quit going to Catholic church and was going to church with him. And so the pastor, we just met with him and he married us. That was it. You know, it was a Saturday morning. We had a show that night at the Opry. So we got married, went out to lunch, went and did the show. So that's how it goes, you know, the show must go on.
Okay, so just so I understand the timeline.
Okay.
So how long was it from when you first met Tuffy to when you met him again?
It was, let's see, it was 1973 when I met him in the choir room. And then it would have been, let me think, I graduated from pharmacy school in 78. So it was probably 79. Yeah, 79.
All the time, and you remembered him the whole time?
Yeah.
And he remembered you?
Yeah, yeah. I know it shocked me. He remembered even my name, you know, and it just really surprised me. I thought, whoa, you know, so that's impressive.
And so what year did you get married?
We got married in 81. Yeah, the January of 81. So we had been, you know, just dating, seeing each other for that long. And we kind of knew that we were meant for each other.
So when you met him the second time, he was already doing music? He was in a band?
Yeah,
Okay.
he had been doing music with a band. The reason he left school and he quit school, he had gone in, they have the counseling sessions, you know, and he went in and had a counseling session with the dean at the conservatory. And the dean says, well, you know, what's your goal? And he said, well, I want to perform. And the dean said, well, what kind of music? He says, well, I want to perform what I'm doing, you know, for live audiences, you know, the kind of music. And he says, so you're already doing this, right? And Tuffy said, well, yeah, I'm doing this unless I'm having classes. And he said, well, then why are you taking classes? The dean said, if you're doing what you want to do, why spend all this time and money on something that isn't going to push you any further? I think the dean knew that he had what he needed as far as the talent goes, because he not only had the musical talent, he had the personality to be a performer. And he really was. He was a good performer. Very proud of what he was. So the dean was smart, and Tuffy thought, okay, because he didn't like school anyway. He hated it. So
he was performing locally in his band?
yeah.
And it was a country music band?
Yeah, mostly country. I mean, he had several bands. He had a country music band that played like in the bars and the clubs around. And then he had an agent also that would book him out of town at out-of-town gigs. And when he went out of town, he had what he called the four-hand band. He had himself and a drummer. And because he could do on the piano enough, and then he didn't have to travel with all the equipment, all the guys, put them all up in a room. It was just him and his drummer, and they would go and play at hotels and restaurants. And he would do country music one weekend, and the next weekend he would play at like the Buttonwood Tree, which was a real fancy restaurant. He played at there was a restaurant that was down in Westport. It was called Papillon's. Super high dollar. I mean, I never went there because it was too expensive. Really high class. It was. He said one time he was playing there and Charlton Heston walked in. I know. He was here in town for something, and that's, so he said, I got to see Moses. So he would be all over town doing all these different things. He had a gift for whatever music they wanted, he would provide it as long as he got paid. And he loved that Papillons because part of his contract with them was free meal. So he got to eat these super expensive meals for free. And he was all about that too. So
It's a good perk. It's a
yeah.
good perk.
But you know, he was doing that the whole time I was in pharmacy school. And all through school, I would see Tuffy Williams here, Tuffy Williams. No idea that that's who that was.
So where did the nickname Tuffy come about?
When he was born, he was born in Pennsylvania, and he was almost a month late. And so when he was born, he was a big baby, I think over 11 pounds. And the doctor that delivered him said, "Wow, this one's a little toughy." And the name stuck.
Because you said his father was also named Carlton.
Carlton,
So
yeah.
they
yeah.
needed a...
Yeah. And our son, when he was born, he wanted to name him Tuffy Jr., but he also wanted the Carlton. So my son's name on his birth certificate is Tuffy Carlton Nathaniel Williams III.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Quite a name.
he calls himself Ash. Changed his name to Ash.
So Tuffy's playing in his band all this time,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you reconnect and start dating,
Uh-huh.
what was your reaction when you realized he did country music, since you didn't like
Yeah.
country music?
Well, country was changing then. When I was growing up, country was the Porter Wagoner and the twangy country music stuff. And country music was changing then. That's when things started getting a little more melodic and not so irritating on the ear. And so it opened me up, I'm always open to learning new things, so I was exposed to a lot of that. At that time, he was playing mostly at an Italian restaurant downtown, and then he was playing at the place that I met him at, re-met him at. And, but what happened with the country, the reason he went that direction primarily was he had heard about a talent contest at this place in Inglewood called the KC Opry. They were having a talent contest, and the winner got $200. So I thought, okay. And so he went out, and they had preliminary rounds and all that, and he made it to the finals. And so I was helping him all along because he had this huge mailing list. He would always keep a thing by his piano wherever he was performing, so that people could write down their name and address, and he could mail out things to let them know where he was performing. And people followed him all over. That's why so many clubs would hire him, because he would draw people in. And so I would always help him fill out all these little things and mail them for the talent contest. And we spent hours doing that. And so he ended up getting up to the final in the talent contest. And it was at the Inglewood Theater, and it was owned by a man named Fred Black. And he was the one sponsoring the whole thing. And they did a show every Saturday night. They had a house band, everything. And then Tuffy found out, talking to Fred, that the business was for sale. Fred had an offer. He had a day job, and he had an offer to move to Seattle. So he was going to move, and he was just wanting to, he didn't want to just close it down because he had built up a following there. He wanted to be able to sell the business to somebody. Of course, that would give him money. So Tuffy did the talent contest, and he came in second. He didn't win. He was so disappointed. But He turned around and bought the theater or bought the business. So he had an aunt that helped him finance getting the business. And they just turned the keys over to him. He was like, okay, well, if I don't win the contest, I'll just buy the business. So that's how he got the Opry. It was already going.
Okay, so that was, you said 79?
The what?
That was 79, the
That was in 1980.
80, okay.
In 1980.
How long had the Opry been running prior?
I think it had been about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had a band, and the band came with it. I mean, the guys in the band still wanted to continue to play. So they just went from Fred Black being the boss to Tuffy being the boss. And it just started out, I mean, the first night that we had told all of Tuffy's family members, he's got a huge family, and we told all his cousins, everybody, aunts, uncles, that Tuffy was going to be performing at the Opry from then on, and they all wanted to be there the first night. So they were there, they came to see the show, and it was like Fred Black's team hadn't shown up. They were not working anymore because he had told them, okay, Tuffy's here, he's in charge, he's going to hire. And we had nobody in the concession stand, nobody in the ticket booth. Tuffy had concentrated on the music part of it and didn't think about the front end. So all of a sudden, all the cousins and aunts and uncles were hired. It was like, okay, you, come pour some sodas. You, popcorn over here. You, sound booth. And, I mean, that's what happened. And most of them stayed on. Most of them stayed. And we would we hired them and paid them to do all the concession stands. That was the big moneymaker, was the concession stand. It always is. Ticket sales is one thing, but you make your most money, because a Coke back in the day, it would cost us 15 cents for a Coke, and we charge, $1.25. So make big money on those, and everybody wanted popcorn and Cokes.
So what do you think, what made Tuffy want to purchase the Opry? What was his motivation there?
He wanted something that was his. He was always a boss. He never liked working for anybody else. And when he was at the restaurants and the clubs and all that, he was the boss of the band. But then whoever hired the band was the boss of Tuffy. And he did not like being under anybody. And the idea that he would be in charge of everything really made him so happy. And I think his mom knew that too. His mom knew that Tuffy was a leader. He was the kind of guy that would take charge. And so that's why she was so supportive. She was so supportive of him. So, and we had, he has 3 sisters, and all 3 of them worked for us. We had one in the ticket booth, one that worked in the concession stand. She was our concession stand manager. And then one of them was a singer. She sang back up with us. So it was a family thing from the first night. It was all family. And I think people recognized that in the people that came, recognized that it was a family venue, a family operation. And they appreciated that because we had families that would come. We had a lot of people that had been coming for the Blacks when the Blacks owned it that just stayed on. They just would come every Saturday. They had their seats, their assigned seats, and every week their seats were full. It was a great operation. It had, there were a lot of financial problem. That's why I had to keep working.
Yeah.
I worked full time the whole time. And a lot of what I made went to keep the lights on and the heat going and, you know, the operation expenses. But that's any business, you know. Business is business.
Did you have any reservations when Tuffy said, "I'm going to buy this place"?
Nope, nope. We weren't married at the time, you know. He just, that was his choice. You know, he could do what he wanted to do. So I was just working in the pharmacy. So, but I would get off work and go right to the show and be there with I started out myself in the sound booth. I was running sound. And every now and then I would do some backup rhythm guitar, some acoustic, and some backup vocals. And then he hired somebody to do that, and I was full-time with the band. And then down the road, he had a bass player that was really good, and she quit because she moved. And he said, he went out and bought a bass and said, "Here, you're my bass player." So he said, "You can learn this, you can do this." And country music on the bass is so simple. It is, it's so simple. And so it didn't take me long to learn. So I was playing bass before too long. So, and I love it. I love it.
So there was a show every Saturday night, is that correct?
Every Saturday and most every Friday.
Okay. Okay.
We would do gospel on Friday night and then the country show on Saturday. Because there's so many gospel artists around locally, and we would have all local talent. We would, you know, the churches would come and they'd have somebody from their church that was going to do some songs, so a lot of the people from the church would come. You know, Tuffy was an expert at drawing people, you know, and he would send out a thing every week to churches saying, so-and-so from this church will be performing, so-and-so from this church, to draw the people from the churches. So, you know, it was all about getting those people into the house.
And I'm sure other churches were like, "Oh, well, if they've got people, we should also."
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Did Tuffy's band perform every night?
yeah, yeah.
And then,
We
and
would
then
have-
also the...
Yeah, yeah. We had the same people. And what happened is he hired the people, the couple that won the talent contest, the original talent contest, he turned around and hired them right away to be part of his show. Because it wasn't just music, it was entertainment as well. And we had like a clown, you know, like the Bald Knobber shows and things in Branson. We had, it was real similar to that kind of show. We would have, you know, a comedian and, you know, we would have storytellers, you know, people come out and just tell stories and whatever. You know, we had dancing, you know, clog dancing. We had whatever the people wanted, you know. And we had talent contests ourselves because that was always a big draw. People would say, "I'm going to be in this talent contest, come in," because the audience voted. And they wanted people to come and vote for them. So that also filled the house. So we would have talent contests, and that would give us like an audition for a lot of people. And so a lot of the people that he found to be part of his show as regulars, he found on their talent contests. So he was a smart businessman in operating it, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was good.
Tell me about the theater itself, the building. What do you remember?
Well, the entryway, the lobby, we had the main lobby, and then we had our ticket booth. Have you seen it?
They won't let us in. I've
But you've
peeked in the windows and I've seen photos.
Well, the ticket booth, she would sell tickets. It's right there. You can see it as you're there on the front portico. And then we had the lobby. So the lobby had the concession stand in the front. And so we would have the concessions in the lobby. Then there was an inner lobby that people would set up, like if we were selling T-shirts or merchandise, they would set up in that inner lobby. And then we had 2 aisles. It's different now. They've changed it. We had a center section. There were 2 aisles that went down from the inner portico down all the way to the stage. And in the center section, there were seats. And then we had side sections as well. So we had seating, aisle, a big center section, then an aisle and seating. We sat 1,000 people. So it's changed a lot now. I think 450. They widened the aisles, and the seats are bigger now. I mean, they were just standard movie theater seats back from the 40s. You know, they were the older seats. And then we had down in the front, we had the stage, and there are exits on each side, and there was a backstage area that we had built. And we renovated it probably about '86, where we extended the stage a little bit, and we put some more dressing rooms up in the back. Mm-hmm. Because when we first started, it was just us. We just did our local show. And for a long time, that's what we did. And then for about 2 years. And then somebody mentioned that, I don't know if you know country music. Have you ever heard of Ernest Tubb?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he was a big performer back mainly in the 50s. And somebody called Tuffy and said that Ernest Tubb was looking for some dates to perform at venues, and would we be interested? And Tuffy thought, well, I don't see why not, you know. And so at the time, they would just charge a certain fee to come and play. And so he said, sure, let's do it. And it was so successful. I mean, people came. He had been a huge name. I mean, he has songs they still play on Willie's Roadhouse Radio. Mm. And, you know, we had people come from way far away to see him. Mm. And that sparked another idea that we should just start maybe booking more of the Nashville acts, which is what we did. But that's why we needed to expand and have some dressing room area in the back, because it was, you know, just some room in the back originally. And we wanted our artists to have a place where they could come in. You know, a lot of them came in buses, but some of them didn't even come in buses. They would come in a van or a car, and they didn't have a dressing room, a place to change. So we only had one bathroom for, you know, a men's and a women's. Mm-hmm. So if they had to change, they'd have to go up into the bathroom with everybody else that was using, you know, coming in. And, you know, we wanted them to have their own little private area. So, but Ernest Tubb was the one that changed it.
So prior to Ernest, it had been Tuffy's band?
All local.
Or
yeah.
only local groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would change out. We would have our band, and we would do, you know, so many songs, and then he would have special guests, like 3 or 4 every week, and different ones. And there were several Opry shows in town, and these people would rotate through the Opry, you know, the different theaters, different shows. And most of them were very talented, very good singers. And then after a while, they would, you know, like Tuffy and like being there with us, and they would say, well, can I just, you know, be part of your show? And Tuffy would say, sure, you know. Because artists back then, you know, they would do a show for a reasonable amount. They just wanted to perform, sure. You know, and to be able to come and get paid to sing. They loved it. They did.
So you were, let's talk about Tuffy's show a bit.
Okay.
So I've seen the videos, the piano,
Yeah.
Tuffy playing with his foot,
Yes,
all that jazz.
that's what he did.
So you were part of the band. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said you did some backup piano.
No, I did guitar.
Backup guitar,
Yeah.
excuse me, and then bass.
And bass.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And vocals.
Okay.
Yeah, I did mostly harmonies. I'd rather be a harmony singer. I'm a backup. I'm not a strong vocalist, so I prefer harmony.
Did you ever get stage fright?
Not really.
No?
No. I had performed so much in high school and college. It was different. It was a different kind of performance because what I had done there was, musicals and scripted stuff and choreographed, rehearsed. That was all. The Opry was all ad lib, and that's why Tuffy was so good at it because he had such a stage personality. It was not hard at all to be a backup for Tuffy because he was it. He was even when a performer, an artist was performing for us there, Tuffy would be over there on the piano, it was just part of him.
So it wasn't a real structured, you would go out there and you wouldn't know what was going to happen.
He frustrated the band so much because we would have a rehearsal in the afternoon, and then we would take a break, and he would make the set list, and we would have a set list. This song first, second, third, fourth. And we would have our music all set up. Everything, and then first song he would do a completely different song, and the whole thing was gone. He would frustrate us so much. It was like, what's the point of a set list? Because he went with the flow. He could feel what an audience wanted, and if he didn't feel like opening with a certain song, it was like he would actually take the list off the piano and just go. And it was like, okay, here we go.
And you knew you were in for it.
Yeah, and we wouldn't know what he was going to do, and he entertained the audience that way. He would tell them after the first song, he'd say, well, I just threw away the set list, so what do you guys want to hear? It was, he just had a rapport with the audience, and they loved him for it. They did. The crowd, the people that would come every week were like family. I mean, we had certain people that we knew were going to be there. They were just part of the Opry. And we still talk about them. There was one lady, her name was Betty Smith, and she sat in the front row every week with her husband, and she wore the worst perfume. And you could smell on the stage, and we'd be backstage getting ready to come out, and we'd go, Betty's here. I mean, it was so funny. We had so many people like that. We had one couple that Ben Franklin was next door, and Ben Franklin had those soft, chewy peppermint taffies. I loved those. And one time they were over next door before the show, and I was over getting some of those little taffies. And I told them how much I liked those, that I would keep them backstage, and just go grab one. And from then on, every Saturday, they brought me those little mints. They said, here's your mints. It was just, that was the kind of crowd that we had. And it just made it so good. Our kids were born during that time, except for my youngest, but they were all born there. And it was like family, everybody, they would hold the kids on their laps during the show, because we trusted these people. They knew us, we knew them. It was a great, it was a time in my life that I felt like so satisfied, everything was so good. Other than that, I had to keep working. Would have been nice to not have to do that, but money is the root of all evil.
So there were shows Friday and Saturday. Was the building closed the rest of the week, or
No.
no?
No. we didn't heat the inner part because it was so expensive. It's a huge building. So during the week, we would just run fans in the summer and little room heaters in the wintertime. And it would be cold or hot, but we just couldn't afford to air condition it. So we would just do it on show days, turn on the power, the AC and the heat, because it was very expensive. That was one of the biggest drawbacks of that building. But, and then we even lived there, Tuffy and I lived there for 3 months one time. We were in between houses waiting to close on a house. And we had to be out of this house by this time and before we could get into this house. So there was in the ladies' room, there was, the area where they have the stalls and the sinks, and then they had a little foyer in the front where women, it had a big mirror and so we put a mattress in there and we would sleep there, and then in the daytime just push the mattress up against the wall. And it was cold. It was in the winter, so we froze. And that was before we had the kids. So that was our home even for a while. So that building, that's why it's so important to me. I'm so happy that they're going to be renovating it and that they didn't just take it down. I think Brent is amazing, what he's doing. He's incredible. He's got the whole team working on it, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with it. I'm excited.
Is there something you'd like to see done with it?
Well, yeah. I want, of course, I want it to be a variety venue, so where they have all different kinds of shows, bring in different acts from places, do local things. My youngest daughter, is a burlesque performer in New York. And she wants to, once they get it open, they have a burlesque festival here in town every year, which she won this year. Not that I'm proud or anything, but anyway, she would like to start something like that on a yearly basis at the theater. And then I am a huge old movie fan. TCM, Turner Classic Movie, that's my favorite channel. And I would love to see them sponsor, some events, old movie events, like they do on Turner Classic Movies. Have somebody from the movie come and do a Q&A with, after the movie, that kind of thing. So there's so many things that could be done with that. So I'm so excited. It'll be great. It will be great. Plus, anything that happens over across the street will draw a crowd that might come over to my daughter's shop and buy some product.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I heard a story. I was hoping you would tell the story.
Okay.
About Tuffy and the piano that caught fire. Does that ring any bells?
That caught fire?
I thought with...
Oh, well, he would explode the pianos. His signature song was Great Balls of Fire, Jerry Lee Lewis. Mm-hmm. And he would, at the end of the show, at the end of the song, he would always save that for his closing number. And he would, he had a pot where he would put gunpowder in the piano, inside the piano. And he had a little switch connected to it on right by his boot, by his foot. And he would just flip the switch with his foot and it would boom. And we still have that piano. And there are char marks all over that piano. But there was one time that I would always have to help him set it up. And he was up on the top, looking in, putting the gunpowder in. I was underneath, attaching the thing to the piano. And he said, go ahead and flip the switch down so that he could get it. I said, no, I'm not flipping that switch because it's plugged in. He said, no, it's not plugged in. Flip the switch. I said, I know that it is plugged in. I said, I'm not going to do it because it will explode. And he said, flip the switch. So I flipped the switch, and it was plugged in. And he was like from here to it. And I jumped up real fast, and he was coming up out of the piano, and there was smoke just pouring out of his beard. And I said, I told you it was plugged in. I mean, he was being demanding, so I thought, okay, you're the boss. Boom. But he didn't do that anymore. He always made sure it was unplugged. But his hearing was kind of off that day, because I mean, it was a big boom. But he learned his lesson. He always had a beard. We were married for 40 years, and I never saw his chin, ever. He never, ever shaved. That's just the way he was. He said he was afraid nobody'd recognize him without his beard. But it was so funny seeing all that smoke just coming off his beard. But no, that was his signature thing. And we had Jerry Lee Lewis one time. Yeah, that was, oh.
Tell me more.
Well, you know, everybody loves Jerry Lee Lewis. And he was traveling and doing his shows. So this was in like February. And it was the day of the show. We had sold out 2 shows. It was the day of the show, and we got a message that he was not going to be there. He had missed something at the airport and was not going to be there. And we already had people coming. We had people coming from Iowa, Nebraska, all that way to see him. And they said, we set up a date for the next week. He said, he will be there the next weekend. But we had people already there, and they were mad. They were angry. And we offered refunds, and we, you know, either keep your ticket for next week or we'll give you a refund. But a lot of them had come a long way. It wasn't our fault, you know, and he was known to miss shows. So it was a gamble to book him, and we lost that gamble. But when he did come, he did a great show.
So he made it the next week.
He did. He made it the next week. Yeah, and he was a nice man, very nice. But, you know, to put us through that, oh, that was, I mean, we had people that they backed us into the ladies' bathroom. This crowd was, you know, it was kind of hairy for a while. But, you know, they had to understand it wasn't our fault. You know, we weren't trying to cheat them. But and we ended up breaking even on that one, where we had hoped we would be making some big money, but it was okay. The nature of the business.
So who were some of the most memorable performers that you all had?
Well, we had one that we had over and over because we knew he would always sell tickets. His name is Ronnie McDowell. And he started out as an Elvis impersonator. And then when Elvis passed away, he put out a song called The King Is Gone. And it was like #1. It was a huge, because he sounded like Elvis. And he did a great show. He had a #1 country hit early in the 80s, and it's called Older Women Are Beautiful Lovers. Anyway, it was a huge hit song, and everybody loved Ronnie. So we would have him probably at least once or twice a year, and he's still out there. He's still going, but he was there real often. Some of the bigger names we had, of course, we had Loretta Lynn twice. We had George Jones, and of course Garth. And but we had.
You were telling me outside about your shirt. Will you tell me for the camera?
Well, so Garth was later when we had been there for quite a while. He was in '89, and he had just put out Much Too Young, that song. And it was on the radio. And I had seen him on some of the Nashville Network from back in the day shows, and I was impressed. You know, I thought he was a good one. And we had a show booked on an evening with, his name was J.C. Crowley, and he had a #1 hit. So we booked him. We tried to get them to book him. And somebody called, one of Garth's agents called and said that he was doing a pass-through. And from Nashville, he was going to Denver, and he was looking for some gigs along the way. And would we be interested? And I told Tuffy, yes. I said, yes, please book him. And he was $1,500. And the day he was coming through was the day we had J.C. Crowley. So I said, just put him on as an opener. Please, just put him on. Because he's a nice kid. And so Tuffy did that for me, you know, because I wanted to see him. And so, you know, $1,500. And we were his first show that he had ever done in a venue with just a concert and not in a bar. He had performed in bars, you know, forever, but he had never performed on a stage. He was so nervous. Oh my gosh. Backstage, he was like so nervous because he had never done that before. But after the first show, they did 2 shows. After the first show, he was fine because he knew he had killed it. You know, the crowd loved him. And he was so good on that first show. His band was great. It was the first public performance ever of Friends in Low Places at the Inglewood Theater. So he did so well, and then J.C. Crowley came out and did his show. Well, in between shows, J.C. Crowley told Tuffy, he said, you know, we really need to get on the road. How about we open and you let Garth finish it? Because he didn't like following Garth, because Garth was so good, and that was a good portent of things to come for Garth.
Absolutely.
So they did. They let J.C. Crowley open first, and then Garth closed the show. But he had his merchandise out in that inner lobby, and I was selling T-shirts for him. I was the T-shirt girl. That's how I got the shirt. He gave me a shirt for helping him. And I don't know if you're familiar with Garth's music, his albums at all?
His bigger hits, I'm familiar
Yeah,
with.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, he did his album called Fresh Horses. The first song on it is called The Old Stuff. And in the song, it's about when he first started and the traveling he did. And he mentions in it several of the venues. And he says, hats off to the KC Opry in the song. So we were so honored that he did that. It was just so cool. It was great, you know, that he remembered us in a song. So.
And then later he signed the shirt for you, correct?
Yeah, the second time we saw him was when he was on his first world tour. And so I thought, well, I'll just wear this shirt, you know, remind him. And so he was signing things. He says, here, let me sign your shirt. So he autographed my shirt.
And he remembered you all, and he,
Yep, he did. And he and Tuffy stayed friends for a long, you know, until Tuffy passed away. And at Tuffy's memorial, we had a really good memorial for Tuffy down at the Uptown Theater. We wanted to do it at the Inglewood, but of course it wasn't open. But Garth sent a video. Did you see it? Yeah. And it was very nice of him to do that. It was funny because I would tell, you know, I'd send him a message and say, you know, please, we could sure use that because we're setting up the show. My son was setting up all the videos. And he said, I'm so sorry, I keep messing them up. So I don't want to send you a bad one. So as soon as I get the right one, I'll send it. So right away he got it back to us. but he wanted it to be the right thing. He wanted it to be a good one. So, yeah, it was a good relationship. I mean, every time he was in town, he would give us tickets. We would go see him for free, and we'd get to go backstage and talk with him, visit with him. It was always nice.
That's so good.
Yeah, we knew his kids when they were little, when they were first born. Now he's got grandkids. So, but who would have known, back when he was just over there, that someday he'd be like the king of country music? Who would have known? Anyway.
So Loretta Lynn came and performed twice.
Right.
Okay. What was that like?
She is such a down-to-earth lady. She was just, she had no pretense at all. She was very nice. She would come and park her bus behind the theater, and she would always have us come up. We'd always go in and visit with her while she was changing her clothes. Mooney, her husband, was always there with her, and he was very nice guy. The second time we had her, the day that we had her was the day that her son was killed in an accident. I know she didn't find out about it until the show was over and she was headed back to Nashville. But I know we felt bad about it, because she was there when it happened. But she was so gracious. She sat there, and in between, after the show, she sat there and autographed everything and greeted people until the last one. Then she would go back and change, get ready for the next show. After the second show, same thing. She loved her fans, and they loved her. We were always so happy to have her because we made money on her. She was expensive. Back in the 80s, she got $20,000 for the two shows. And that, back in the 80s, that was a heck of a lot of money. But it was worth the investment because we made money off of her. So, and we would sell out 1,000 seats every time, both shows. So she was so nice. And her kids, several of her kids, her girls were backup singers for her, and one of her sons was a guitar player. So again, it was a family thing for her. But she was just so nice. She used to send us, afterwards, she would send us Christmas cards. I know. She was so nice. Just a real down-to-earth person. Most of them were. In country music, that's kind of the thing. Most of our people, we had like Bill Monroe from bluegrass music. We had them. We had a group called the Drifting Cowboys that were, Hank Williams, the original, the Hank Williams. They were his backup band, his band. And they stayed on over the years as the Drifting Cowboys, and they would do all his stuff. They were so nice. They were super nice people. I'm trying to think of who else. We had so many. Bill Anderson, Whispering Bill. Did you ever hear of Bill Anderson? Yeah. He was always nice, always nice. He and Tuffy would run around. Did you ever hear of Tom T. Hall? He did a song called, so many of them. He told story songs, Old Men and Children and Watermelon Wine. Watermelon Wine's the name of the song. He did story songs. He was very, very popular. And he came and did a show. And Tuffy used to take people around to the radio stations to do just a little blurb to encourage people to come. And so he was driving Tom T. Hall around. And Tuffy was a talker. He would talk and talk and talk. And so after the show, Tom T. Hall was signing some pictures for us. And he signed one of his 8x10s. He says, "To Tuffy, shut up, Tom T. Hall." we posted that one right there in the front lobby. So it was, yeah, we had a lot of different types of people. We had one, his name was Mel McDaniel, and he was country music. You know, he had big things on the charts. And we had him once and didn't have him back because he was like the king, you know. He was difficult. And then when we had Conway Twitty, we had him twice. But the first time we had him, his show was weird because most people, when they do a concert, they'll talk in between songs. He would just come out and do song after song after song, and no anything in between. And it was like, that's weird, you know. It's just like he just wanted to get it over with. And after the first show, Tuffy was back in the back because he hadn't met Conway yet. So Tuffy was back waiting for him to come off. Conway just went right by him and out the door. And, you know, that just kind of took Tuffy by surprise. So after the second show, Tuffy was waiting back there again. And Conway comes down off the stage toward the back door, and Tuffy steps right in front of the front door. And he goes, "I'm the man that's paying you, and you're going to shake my hand before you walk out this door." And so Conway stopped and talked to him for a minute. But you know, that's what it took. Some of them were real personable. Some of them didn't want anything to do with it. They just wanted to get the job done and go. So, but the ones that that were the nice ones are the ones that had the best crowds, the people that followed them. You know, they were more loved. People know those things, you know, the audience does. So we had a lot of interesting people. But one of the most interesting ones we had, do you remember Boxcar Willie? Did you ever hear about him?
I think I've heard of him.
Okay, back in the 80s, late night TV, they had all those infomercials, right? And they had commercials for this guy named Boxcar Willie, and he did train songs. And he dressed in a hobo outfit, and you know, the commercials were really good. And so Tuffy thought, I bet people would want to come and see him. So he did some research into it, and he found his agent, and he booked him. And so the first show, one of the first that we had after Ernest Tubb was Boxcar Willie. And we sold out because people had seen these commercials, and they were buying his records on TV and everything. And he had this little band that he had with him. You know, he brought his own band. Some of them brought their own bands. Some of them, we were the backup. But he brought his own band, and he was such a nice man, so nice. And so, of course, we booked him again. Well, the first time we booked him, he was about $1,000 for the show, which was so cheap back then, you know, but it was in the 80s. So then we booked him down the road, and it went to $10,000 because he got to be really popular. And so we thought, yep, we'll do it again. And he had been booking all over the world because he was so popular. And he was over in Europe with his band 2 days before our show. And then he had more gigs in Europe. And any other artist would have canceled our show. He came back and did our show and then went back because he said that a contract is a contract. And the second time we had him was right after our first son, you know, my son was born. And Box was saying, you know, how's everything going? He was asking Tuffy, how's it going being a new parent, you know? And Tuffy said, well, you know, it's going okay. You know, things are kind of tight, but we're making it. And Tuffy had just paid Box, and he took $500 out of it. He says, here, this is for your son, and gave him some money back. Wasn't that, that's just the kind of person he was. He was a nice guy. Then later on, Box opened his own theater in Branson. He had, after his big touring thing was done and he decided to just settle, he opened a show in Branson and he asked Tuffy to come and be his pianist, you know, and Tuffy didn't do it. He didn't want to work for somebody else, even if it was Boxcar. So, but he had the opportunity to go to Branson. But I'm glad he didn't. I don't know if I could have handled that. So we had nice people. We did. It was fun. It was fun. Of course, having Garth, you know, always made, having had him and been a part of his start was such an honor, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. It was an interesting life. It was very interesting. Here all day long I'd be counting pills and, you know, counseling patients and all that. And then I'd have to completely flip and go and play bass and, you know, rehearse. And you know, and I had the kids too, so I had to take care of the kids. And it was, my life was busy. It was crazy.
So, you had 3 children, is that right?
4.
4 children.
Yeah, I had 3 then.
3 then.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then Molly was born later
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay. What was that like? What was raising kids in that environment?
It was just the way they were raised. I mean, they knew their way around that theater. That was their playground, really. Because when I would work, Tuffy's mom would be there at the theater during the week. She would be there to help with ticket sales. And we kept the doors unlocked. So we had the concession stand open during the week. And people that would come shopping in Inglewood, whenever we would, you know, need gas money to go home or whatever, Tuffy would start popping popcorn. And that smell would go out the door. And we'd sell a lot of popcorn and Cokes. But the kids, you know, knew how to pop popcorn. They grew up doing all that stuff. You know, they knew music. They did. They're all still musicians. You know, they love music. So it was just day-to-day life for them. It was so funny because we had a guy that brought arcade machines. This is when arcade machines were just starting up. And he had like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and he had them in our lobby. And he would, you know, come in, we would get a commission off of having it in the lobby. And one of the best babysitters ever was when they were little, and they didn't know if we'd put a quarter in or not. And because they had the screen, you know, and the Pac-Man was going all over, and they'd sit there hitting the buttons thinking that they were playing the game. And, you know, for an hour, they would sit there thinking they're playing this game. Didn't cost us a dime. So if I had to go mop or clean the bathrooms or whatever, I'd just say, here, play a game for a while. And they'd sit there. It was great.
So you were working full-time at the pharmacy, and you were raising kids, and you were in the band. I'm sure you had other roles as well.
Oh, yeah, I had to do the cleaning. And, you know, after every show, we had the theater at the time sloped downwards toward the stage, and then it would slope up a little the last 2 rows. So there was that trough area down there, and that was the F row. That was the row that was A, B, C, D, E, F. And it was always a coin toss on who was going to clean up the F row. Because if anybody spilled in the back, it would all run down to the F row or the front. And so there was always like a trough of soda in the F row. And it was, so we always would say, okay, whose turn is it this week? Who's doing the F row? So that was an in-house joke. But it was usually me. So that was my job. I always got it done.
Yeah.
It was part of the job, you know. I had to be ready for the next show.
Let's wrap it up today with, tell me what your favorite aspect of life with the Opry was and what your least favorite aspect was.
Well, my favorite was that it was a family operation, and we all were a part of it. And it gave me the opportunity to perform like I always wanted to do with my husband, who was phenomenal. So I was part of something that was important to people and that they loved. I love music. And luckily that got passed on between their dad and me. I got passed on to our kids. So that's what I like, just the fact that it was a community. Even the people that were not family were family. It was a very warm relationship. The thing I didn't like the most about it was the financial part, of course. It was a struggle. It was a struggle. Any music business is a gamble. In good times, it was good. And then, summertime, we would have good crowds. Wintertime, it was cold, blizzardy, whatever. We would, it was always a gamble. Some shows we'd make good money on. Some shows we would lose big money on. We had one thing that was called the British Invasion. And it had groups from back in the 60s, British Invasion. We had Chad and Jeremy and Freddie and the Dreamers, and we lost a fortune on that because it blizzarded that night. I know. And so we lost a ton of money on that. It was a great show. They came and they did the show. They always did. But, so it was that was the hardest part, was the struggle. Because we had to keep the doors open. And, we had to sacrifice so many different things in order to be able to do that. But, we always were hoping for that one big thing, But it was worth it. It was worth it, definitely. Okay. And I'm so thrilled that people even care anymore, I thought it was just part of the past. Nobody even cared anymore. But now they do. It's so nice to know that it made an impact.
Amen. Yeah.
I don't know if you listen to country radio in town at all. There's on KFKF, Debbie Erickson, one of their DJs. Her name is Debbie Martin, and she was one of our performers. She started with us. Wow. And there was a guy, he's still around. He does shows and stuff all around. His name is Elijah Chastain, and he started with us when he was 10 years old. Tuffy's sister found him she was a nurse at the school out in Belton, and they had a school talent show, and Elijah played guitar and on the talent show. And she told him that he needed to come out and audition for Tuffy. Well, Tuffy grabbed him right away. It was so funny because he loved country music, and this kid was talented. And I mean, he had his own show in Lewisburg for years later on. But he
Even
would
that
do.
young, he could.
Oh yeah,
he could
and he would one of his favorite songs to sing. He was 10 years old. Was George Strait's "All My Exes Live in Texas." he would do that song, and it just cracked me up. He's 10 years old singing about his exes. But I still keep in touch with him. He's a super nice fella. He went and did his own show, and yeah, and that's a whole nother story about that. Anyway, I'll tell you about that another time.
We'll put a bookmark
Yeah,
in it,
because
we'll make a note.
yeah, no, we would also do Elvis shows because Elvis impersonators, they would always draw a crowd. Whenever we needed money, we would book an Elvis impersonator, and there's a lot of them that are local. Anyway, we had one that was not local, that was a big name Elvis performer. His name was Johnny Hara. And so we had the show set up, and Tuffy was doing his rounds with Johnny Hara. And I got a call from our main guitar player, who was Elijah. He had been 10, but he was like in his 20s now. And he said, I can't be there. I'm playing out at Big Creek tonight. I told him I'd be there. And I said, you can't do this to me. You can't. And he said, I'm sorry. He said, they've asked me to come and play guitar with them from now on, and so I'm going to go and play for them. So here we have an
Just like that.
Elvis
Yeah.
impersonator. Tuffy's not there. He had nobody. I had nobody. I was there by myself trying to get the concession stand ready, and I found out that you can't do an Elvis show without a guitar player. So I got on the phone and I started calling everybody I knew, and everybody had gigs. And so I called another guy that was a friend of ours that ran a show, the Richmond Opry, and he gave me a list of names, and he says, try this one. His name is Monty Tatum, and he would probably do a pretty good job for you. So I called, and Monty said, well, yeah, I can be there. I'll be there. And I knew this guy from nothing. And I thought, if he's got a guitar and he's on the stage, it's better than nobody. So he came and introduced himself. He's a very nice man. And so we went down, and when Tuffy got back, he said, who the heck is this guy? I said, just start rehearsal. I don't care. I said, Elijah couldn't be here. This guy's filling in. Let's just do this. So we started the first song, and Monty killed it. He knew this stuff. We hired him on the spot full time, and he played for us the rest of the time. But Elijah did that to me. Oh, I still love him. I love that kid, but and he knows I'll never forgive him for that. That was Panic City. But the music business. Anyway, he still plays for them at Big Creek sometimes. So Big Creek's still open.
Okay.
Yeah, down in Pleasant Hill. So anyway, we started a lot of the people here, Debbie and Elijah. There's a lot of people around here that will say that they started out with Tuffy. So we went through a lot of band members, though, because we would also travel. We would perform at fairs and festivals, and Tuffy always had to have his grand piano. So we had to haul that grand piano everywhere. That was his signature instrument. And as soon as these band members found out they had to help move a grand piano every show, they wouldn't last very long. They'd say, well, I'm not getting paid enough for this. So we would lose band members. We traded them out. But we always got good ones in place. So always had a real good band.
Okay, Karen, we're gonna pause there.
Yes.
And then next time we bring you in, we can talk more about.
I'm sorry, I have so many stories.
This is exactly why we brought you in, to get those stories. Don't apologize at all. I'm thrilled that you're willing to come in and do more.
Yeah.
So
Well, I want Tuffy and what he did there to be remembered.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it was important.
It was.
Like I said, I'm so happy that people even remember us. You know, it makes it like it was worthwhile.